Hello, and welcome to this Baymage Journal hosted webinar titled Automotive Shopping in 2021, How Digital Incentives Will Help Brands Adapt and Thrive, sponsored by Onbe. Now, I am your host, Ryan Mack. So, a few housekeeping items before we get to today's guest speakers. First, a recording of this presentation will be made available after this presentation has concluded. Next, we are going to be having a poll question, and your participation is encouraged and welcome. And lastly, we are going to have a Q&A portion as well during this presentation, and we encourage you to submit your questions at any time using the questions tab within the GoToWebinar application. Now, with that out of the way, it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speakers. First, we have Tracy Monson, who is OnBe's Senior Vice President of Product. And next, we have Don Apgar, who is Mercator Advisor Group's Director of Merchant Acquiring Advisory Practice. Now, quick for a little agenda, items. First, we're going to be doing a quick getting to know Onbe. Then next, we're going to be unpacking some interesting data from a recent consumer study. Next, we're going to be doing a deep dive on millennials and how to market to them. Next, we will follow that up with a look at incentive offers. Then we'll discuss seamless payouts and benefits. And then next, we'll tie all of this together with how this will help inform your strategy. Then we're going to conclude with a Q&A section. So now with the intros and the agenda out of the way, Tracy, could you please kick off this fantastic presentation?
Yes, thank you, Ryan, for the intro. Let me do a quick intro to Onbe, first of all. So Onbe is a fast-growing corporate disbursements platform. We help businesses modernize how they incentivize and pay customers, distributors, and employees. Brands choose to partner with Onbe to increase their bottom line and grow market share through engaging branded payment experiences. So we work with brands across a variety of industries, and we power other key players, whether that's validation platforms all the way to marketing agencies who serve those industries. Now, in the auto space, Onbe has extensive experience delivering consumer incentive programs, sales incentives, auto loan refunds, manufacturer recall payments, and more. Slide, please. All right, so our study, Onbe conducted a study where we wanted to understand, one, consumer expectations for their car buying experience, especially in a post-COVID world. Two, how automotive businesses can meet their customers where and how they choose to shop for their next vehicle. Sneak peek, it's increasingly through digital channels, no surprise. And lastly, we wanted to explore the impact that current inventory shortages are having on consumer behavior. Let me say a little bit more about that. Today, millions of our everyday products, cars, smartphones, washing machines, etc., rely on chips. And now, more than ever before, there aren't enough to meet demand. So the shortage initially began because of a delay in production caused by factories shutting down during the emergence of COVID. And then at the same time, remote work became a new normal. So whether you love remote work or you hate it, whatever your opinion, regardless, it increased the demand for telecommunication hardware, ultimately creating a strain on the supply and demand ratio for these chips. Don, I'm assuming this is an area you're tracking as well as far as impact and widespread reach.
Yeah, the chip shortage has affected everything. And in fact, in the payments industry, card issuers are struggling now with the chips that go into the EMV credit and debit cards that we use. And some reissuance of cards has been delayed because of shortages in chips.
Yeah, yes, it's very, very real in our industry. I will say Onbe's customers are pretty well positioned for this. Throughout the pandemic and over the last several years, we've been kind of prepared for and driving some of that consumer preference to virtual form factors and other digital payments. And I think, the other thing I'd say there is a silver lining out of all of that is the virtual option being kind of the greener, more eco-friendly form factor out there. But all that to say, the auto industry isn't escaping the supply and demand issue, right? So manufacturers and dealerships are feeling pressure and they need to adapt quickly to fast changing market conditions. And of course, with these challenges come opportunities to connect and engage with customers and meet their growing expectations for digitally enabled experiences, which is kind of what our study found up and down. Next slide, please. Okay, our findings at a high level, we know that digital experiences are key to driving success. So we'll focus today on 3 themes. 1, marketing to millennials. 2, the power of incentives to acquire customers and guide behavior. And 3, the importance of seamless payouts across the entire industry ecosystem. So the data says, when it comes to researching and purchasing a vehicle, the majority of Americans say they'll start online, which underscores the importance of designing omni-channel payment experiences that feel seamless. So of consumers planning to buy a car in the next 18 months, we found 83% will research the purchase online, 86% will comparison shop across multiple dealers and websites, 72% will actually shop online, and 16% will shop exclusively online. So what this means is that brands and dealers must be prepared to meet and incentivize customers how they prefer to interact, and importantly, how they prefer to spend. So all that said, our study found that brands will build goodwill and strengthen customer relationships when they optimize the entire payment experience, even after that initial sale, whether we're talking about loyalty, loan overpayment refunds, product recalls, settlements, appeasements, all these different kinds of payouts that occur in the space. Slide, please.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and say that we're seeing the same parallel in the payments industry, between seamlessness and millennials, right? Millennials want more options in payments, but at the same time, they want it to be more seamless as well. So it's a very, very strong parallel.
Yes. Okay, so speaking of millennials, who is racing to buy a car? And Don, I love this industry just for the potential wordplay alone, right? So who is racing to buy a car? Our study found that most consumers planning to buy or lease a vehicle in the next 18 months are millennials. So the implication here is that manufacturers and dealers should focus on digital incentives, loyalty rewards, and payouts that align with this generation's preference for personalized online and mobile experiences, immediate gratification, and spend flexibility. So brands need to offer multiple ways to interact, and when it comes to delivering funds, they've got to offer choice around speed of payment and spend. And I want to note that these concepts really should cut across the entire consumer life cycle. So we need to be thinking about these preferences when it comes to acquisition efforts like test drives, purchase rewards, and fuel reimbursement programs. And then these same preferences apply to loyalty and cross-sell interactions, whether that's loyalty at the next purchase or trade-in, or a dealership driving maintenance activities into the service bay. So Don, anything else you're seeing when it comes to millennial preferences and how these brands can best reach this demographic?
No, I think that makes the point very well, Tracy. It's, as we said on the previous slide, the millennials, particularly millennials of that age group, looking for more choices, more flexibility, but at the same time, they want the process to be seamless and painless and transparent. So quite a paradox.
Okay, so Ryan, I think we've got a poll planned with the audience, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. So the poll that we're going to be launching here, and certainly would love our audience response here, is what is the most important to you when buying or leasing a vehicle? So we're going to go ahead and launch that there. So we've got quite a few different options available. So we'll leave this poll open for just probably about half a minute or so. So if you want to go ahead and submit your responses, that would certainly be fantastic. Yeah, I certainly have to, with the presentation so far, have to agree with all the points, just being a millennial myself. One of the things that I certainly love is also the instant gratification side of things, especially when it comes to incentives. I like that instant feeling. I mean, you kind of think about just in terms of, well, I think of millennial generation, kind of my generation. We grew up where just everything was instant. We did not have to wait for anything, and we expect that same experience from an entire payments experience and also from an incentive side of things. If somebody's saying, hey, here's this incentive, as soon as we fulfill that action, we want to see that incentive, not, hey, it's coming 2 days later, 3 days later. We want it typically very instant and also from a digital perspective. So I agree wholeheartedly from my generation standpoint on everything that's said so far. So why don't I go ahead and I'm going to close out this poll here, and I'm going to share the results to everybody for it. So certainly some very interesting results here. But Tracy, would love to get kind of your perspective on what you're seeing from these poll results.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that the audience viewpoint here is mostly reflecting our consumer study, really. The price and incentive piece being top, we'll talk about that in a moment. And then some of these other things that you might have thought would be more important to the buyer really take the back seat.
All right, excellent. Dawn, curious, maybe kind of get your takes on it here. So we've got 44% at price and incentives, 11% at safety features, another 11 at fuel efficiency, 28 at style and look, and then only 6% at technology features. Curious, Dawn, maybe kind of from your perspective, what are your takeaways maybe from this poll?
Yeah, it's everybody's looking for value, right? I mean, we want safety and efficiency and technology and style, but there's only so much that consumers are willing to pay. So value at the end of the day, I think, is the most desirable feature, right?
Excellent. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide those poll results, and we'll move on to the next slide in the presentation.
So, okay, so those results, I think we had people at 44% were looking for price and incentives. And then I think the next highest there was the look, right? The kind of the look and the slickness of the car. So I think we probably have some pretty savvy, stylish people on the line. But what our study found, not too different. Our study found that 71% of consumers consider price and incentive over all other factors, including those that you had listed: buying, or safety, fuel efficiency, style, size, and the tech features. So one of the things that surprised me in the study, we were surprised that the investment in incentives really doesn't have to be that large to have an impact. So consumers indicated that they'll engage with brands for incentives as modest as $25. So that makes me ask the question, what can incentives do for the auto industry in this particular moment? So in today's market, far from being deterred by the current automotive shortage, consumers are willing to be more flexible about the make and model of their next vehicle. So only 10% of survey respondents said that vehicle selection was a top factor when shopping for a car. So for all of us here today, this means that with the right incentives, manufacturers and dealerships actually have the power to shift consumer spend away from their preferences, win new customers, and drive sales even when selection on the lot is low. So if I come in, I'm thinking I'm ready to rock the next mommy minivan from my favorite brand, but it's not on the lot. With the right incentive, you might be able to get me comfortable with a mid-size SUV and keep my business. Don, I don't know about you. Would you switch brands or model for the right incentive?
I think I might. It's interesting. It's apropos that you have a mobile phone here on the graphic, because and it's not just about the incentive itself. It's also about not having to have a big hassle about getting the incentive.
Mm-hmm.
And take the advantage of the offer to engage in the brand, but give me a digital access to that, so it's almost real-time gratification where I engage with the brand, and now I have my $25.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the other point I'd make there too is digital incentives don't have to be exclusively for digital marketing channels, right? They can be incorporated in almost really almost any marketing channel, whether it's email marketing, display advertising, social media, even print, right? It's about making sure that when the incentive is delivered, it's delivered seamlessly and the consumer has the ability to interact with that incentive kind of through however they would like, right? Whatever their channel preference is, like we were talking about with millennials and needing to offer them choice and flexibility. Ryan, let's go to the next slide. So returning kind of to that loyalty theme, dealerships can drive loyalty and revenue by implementing a service incentive program that brings customers back again and again into the dealership. So we found that 50% of customers said they'd spend incentives back at the dealer for parts and accessories and service. This is where a digital branded overlay kind of packed with that messaging to drive behavior becomes critical to the payment experience. And then here's our millennials again. So 86% say they would opt to service their car at the dealership for a $15 incentive. Next slide. Okay, more than ever, auto businesses need to think broadly about the total customer experience. So money is constantly moving throughout the auto ecosystem, and delivering a seamless experience packed with choice and spend flexibility isn't limited to just incentives. So we were surprised to learn that 70% of consumers would prefer a digital refund for overpayment on an automotive lease or loan. Now, especially in an industry like this where multiple parties can own and impact the customer relationship, brands should select partners that prioritize modern payment experiences to cement customer loyalty and really ensure that every step in that journey feels extremely smooth. John, this reminds me of what you were saying about kind of the omni-channel piece and that tension that you mentioned about.
Yeah, for sure. It's you know, anybody that's spent any time in retail, you know, omni-channel is the buzzword now. So, you know, retailers spend a lot of time thinking about how they interact with consumers in their stores, but you know, it's not just about the store experience. Consumers are shopping online, consumers are going to your website, consumers are looking up your store information on their mobile devices, you know, wherever they may be. And every time you interact with that customer, every touch point is both a chance to wow the customer or annoy the customer. And so you have to look at the whole journey, right? And every interaction that your business and your brand has with the customer, you know, to make sure that the experience is good and it's consistent.
Yep, I love that. And I mean, it really goes into, it's how we think about the payment piece as well, right? Because you have to think about the customer channel preference for all of their interactions, including things like self-service around the payment or a live agent or chat, or do they want spend notifications? How do they want to authenticate themselves to access their funds securely? You have to be thinking of that omni-channel perspective the whole way through. Slide, please. Oh, Don, this is you.
So some statistics on prepaid cards that Mercator has put together. And this is open loop prepaid cards. When we talk about open loop, that means that the card has a brand such as a Visa or a MasterCard logo that gives the card utility any place that brand is accepted. And more businesses are turning to using the card platform as disbursement beyond just the, you know, I bought a gift card at Macy's kind of a thing. So, you know, we're headed in just a couple of years up to 500 billion plus in funds that are loaded onto these types of cards. And you know, even though the card is branded, it can still be restricted to function like a closed loop card, to be used only at a specified store. And this dollar amount does include both physical and virtual cards. So Ryan, if you jump to the next slide for me. So that 500 billion comes from a lot of different places, right? So, for example, payroll, branded cards are being used for payroll in hourly hourly work cases, in some cases restaurants, etc. Cards are also used to help us spend the money that we accumulate in our FSA and our HSA. Gift cards, unemployment benefits, and lots of other things. Campus cards or funds are being loaded onto these cards as a platform to enable a consumer easy access to the money. So, we see consumer incentives at 3.5% of the total. Small but probably the fastest growing segment in the open loop prepaid card market today.
Yeah,
And,
this really is all about the ubiquity of prepaid, and it kind of reminds me of the part of the discussion about, we're not just thinking about incentives, we're thinking about all the way that money moves through this automotive ecosystem, in both incentive and non-incentive based use cases. So it's a form factor that the average consumer is comfortable with and has been using across all these areas of kind of their everyday life. I think the other thing with prepaid is it's been around forever, but it continues to evolve, right? And speak to kind of those demands for speed and flexibility. I'm thinking of virtual cards and tokenization and adding cards to mobile wallets and being able to spend seamlessly with your virtual card and other contactless types of form factors.
Well, another point, Tracy, is that as we distribute funds on these cards, from a marketing perspective, you create more touch point opportunities with the consumer, because whether the card is physical or digital, you ask the customer to go to a website and say, hey, please activate this and we'll turn your card on. And an activation process is a way to get to interact one more time with the customer. And then if you give the customer, say, a $25 prepaid card for a test drive, in the example you used earlier, if they spend $24 of it, that's another opportunity to go back to the customer and say, hey, you have $1 left on your incentive card.
Yeah.
So
I think, John, it's kind of that you bring together branding, like you're talking about, and then choice, and it really becomes like a very personalized experience delivered by the brand to the consumer. And right now, where we have these very savvy, sort of empowered consumer bases out there, this is really how brands can build goodwill, right? You deliver a personalized payment experience, talk to them, drive them to new offers, give them value, and then give them the choice they're looking for.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Tracy. And Ryan, if you skip to the next slide, talking about choice, right? We're seeing more prepaid cards be delivered digitally than the physical card. So up from 27% up to almost 38%. So on its way to be, half of all these prepaid cards will be delivered digitally, which means, there's no physical card, right? You get an email with with login instructions and an account number that you can then transact with without actually having a piece of plastic. And it makes the experience that much more seamless, because you don't have to wait for anything to come in the mail, right? You can deliver a digital prepaid incentive to somebody immediately, as Tracy was showing before with the cell phone and the test drive lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Don, this totally matches with what Onbe observed really pre-COVID, and then of course accelerated by COVID, is kind of the shift from physical to virtual, like we've been talking about. And then from Onbe's point of view too, as a payments provider generally, we've also seen the demand for other digital payment experiences, right? Like real-time transfer of funds to bank accounts, and some of these other exciting modalities that are really disrupting the physical space.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so to recap, Here we go, advice for the road. Consumers want digital experiences, and that applies to every leg of the journey. With vehicle selection currently limited and consumers increasingly going online to source their next car, manufacturers and dealers can win customer loyalty by implementing a digital disbursement strategy that delivers fast gratification, choice of payment modality, targeted promotions to drive spin back, and most importantly, that seamless digital experience that we've been talking about. And Ryan, I think we've got some time for questions.
Yes, we certainly do. So just as a reminder to our audience here, you can certainly use the questions panel within the GoToWebinar application to submit your questions. So for this first question here, I think is kind of a little bit of a doozy. And obviously, you know, we were talking at the beginning of this in terms of the chip shortage. So kind of my first question off the bat is, how long then do you expect the chip shortage to affect the auto supply and the auto industry?
Yeah, that is a doozy. John, do you want to take a swing at it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question for sure. And you know, the reports that I've seen say that we're going to be well into 2022 before we get out of this. The global chip industry was running at about 80% of capacity before COVID hit, and it has since been hampered by I think what was it, a factory fire, Tracy, over in China, and some other issues. And given that the average car or vehicle takes, was it 150 plus chips? It's a difficult challenge.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while to ride out, and there's going to be some ups and downs. And I mean, just with the volatility, you have to look for partners that are going to kind of be nimble and help you weather changing conditions. And you know, brands, especially in industries impacted by the shortage, are going to need new strategies for reducing costs and really keeping and hopefully growing their market share.
Well, and as I said earlier, you know, the chip shortage has started to affect some of the credit card issuers in terms of generating new cards. And you know, the quick way around that is digital incentives, right? No chip required.
Yep. My washing machine started making this horrible sound over the weekend, and I'm really hoping some of the supply issues with at least washing machines gets resolved soon.
Yeah, I think the chip shortage question is certainly one of those. If you had a clear-cut crystal ball into when it was going to end, I think we'd all be a lot richer here. But if we can, let's jump to the next question. So you talked about incentive programs and delivering rewards digitally here. What kind of marketing channels and customer experiences can digital payments and refunds be used in?
Yeah, can I take this one?
Yes, absolutely, please.
All right. Yeah, we started to touch on this a little bit earlier. Really, digital payments can be used in any marketing channel. I've seen them in all marketing channels, whether it's email marketing, display advertising, pay-per-click advertising, search engine marketing, social. What's important is really making sure that whether you're initially reaching that customer online, desktop or mobile, or by the phone, whatever it is, there's got to be the seamless integration between all distribution, promotion, and communication channels. And like we've been talking about, that applies to every interaction, including the payment.
No, I think that's exactly right. You know, customers not only want the instancy of digital, but also the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll certainly have to agree there. So for my next question, so if I want to talk to someone about starting to include digital payment options for customers, what should my first steps be?
Yeah, I would say get in touch, visit onbe.com and fill out the contact us form there. I will tell you, you know, payments can sound complicated. There's compliance, there's regulatory pieces, there's fraud prevention services. There's really leveraging the data and the analytics properly. But Onbe is a team of payment experts, and we're here to make it easy and get you to market quickly. So get in touch. Be good.
Excellent. And I guess kind of one other question that I have here is that, so when I'm taking a look at an incentive programs and I'm thinking, of, okay, I want to move forward and I want to implement something, what are some of maybe kind of some of the pitfalls or some of the things that I should be aware of that I should really look out to as I kind of start to vet partners that I would want to partner with for enabling digital incentives?
Yeah, you want to look for partners with experience. You want to look for partners who are nimble. You want to look for partners who can help you deliver on those pieces that customers are demanding. So you need to ask about, branding capabilities. You need to ask about choice. You need to ask about form factor flexibility, and really have those partners show you this is how we help you engage with these customers and earn their goodwill, right? And cement that customer relationship through payments.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. I think we'll give another moment or two just if anybody has any additional questions. But again, just for the slide that we've got left up here, if you want to learn more about Onbe's digital disbursement products for automotive brands, certainly visit onbe.com/industries/automotive. So it looks like that's all the questions that we've had come in. Obviously, if you have any questions that go beyond the webinar, certainly feel free to reach out to Onbe at any point in time. So Tracy, Dawn, thank you so much for this absolutely fantastic presentation. And this now concludes this webinar.
Great, thanks so much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.